אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ונעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ונעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם
Shabbat Shalom to everyone who is in our congregation and to all who are streaming with us. It is a wonderful Sabbath to gather together, and on this Shabbat, not only do we celebrate the day of rest, but it is also a moment of the celebration of life of Joseph Bettman, one of the patriarchs of our community and of our congregation. When we said goodbye to him at the funeral, our choir wanted to sing and sing and sing and sing and sing his praises such that we'd probably still be here at this moment. And so we decided to wait just a few months and take an opportunity to celebrate him with song and joy and love. And so this Shabbat is not only for all of us a moment of life and celebration, but a moment to share some of our special memories of what he meant to our congregational family and what he meant to our choir as we sing his praises literally. So we begin with Ira Segalowitz.
I first met Joe in 2000 when I arrived in Dayton and joined the Yiddish Club. And we became the leaders of the Yiddish Club. We became the song leaders. You know, Joe would teach the melody, I would teach the lyrics. And everybody learned, you know, how to sing in Yiddish. So as time went by and we started this choir, I saw Joel and Elaine come in, and they sat down right over there, and I walked up to Bima and grabbed them by the hand and said, "Joe, you've got to join us." And he did, and the rest is history. Now, Elaine likes to tell this story. She usually, when she introduces me, she always says, "He's the one that got Joe to join the choir." So, thank you all.
And so we begin by kindling the lights of Shabbat. I asked a couple of the members of the family if they'd like to kindle the lights, and they're not so sure. So we ask that anyone who would like to come up to kindle these lights. Do I see a few of his family? Or, yay! And Lena, I don't know if you want to join in, or anyone who'd like to come up, and we kindle the lights and bring in a little warmth and joy of Shabbat. There we go. We got a baby, we're fine. אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לאהוב. Blessed is the eternal, our God, ruler of the universe, who brings us to this holy moment, this holy time, and commands us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. Marilyn will now introduce our opening song.
Our opening song is Shalom Aleichem, which was one of my favorites during the pandemic because I got to sing it with Joe. We each sang in our little squares, our Brady Bunch squares on Zoom, and he would always sing the first and third verse. I would sing the second and the fourth, but it was just very special, just like Joe was to me. And unrelated to Shalom Aleichem, when I would have a solo and I would be done singing, or at the end of the service, Joe would always say, "You still got it, kid." So it always made me feel so good because I know I've done something right and I didn't screw it up. So.
Shalom Aleichem. We welcome the Sabbath angels to bless us on this Shabbat. And our tradition always has it that there are angels, there are guardians who are above and with us at moments such as these. And I hope and I pray and I know that we've felt Joe's memory as an angel guiding us through our days and certainly our important Sabbaths and moments throughout these years. So we now turn to what is called the Call to Worship, and Sarah Weiss-White, who teaches our kindergarten first grade, will tell us a little bit about the Call to Worship.
So some memories that I have with Joe, of course, growing up, knowing him as a kid, growing up in Sunday school. But one of the things that really connected me was I got to teach some of his great-grandchildren in preschool and kindergarten through the last few years, and really get to know them and just know how great of kids they are and how much of an impact that he really had on them with how great of a person he was. So we're going to be doing the Baruch, and it's a version that we do a lot during Sunday school. So I wanted to know if Lily, Parker, and Leighton want to come join me.
Yeah, it's like, uh-oh, come on, yay! And the baby, oh, thank you so much, Leighton, good job. Woo! Sing into this mic, buddy. And we all rise together for our call to worship. La la, la 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la, Thank you. And Renee will now join us for some words. Why don't we be seated?
And shalom to everyone. Some of you I know by sight and some of you I don't. I came here with the Air Force. I was assigned to the Air Force Institute of Technology at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And when I came in, I had a 3-year role. And I met the lay leader, who was Ken Bauman, and he wanted me to introduce me to Elaine and to Joe. And after we were introduced, it was Joe who said to me, you know that you can join Beth Abraham as well as coming here. And so we did. And that is where my son was introduced to Sunday school as a 3-year old, and that's where he went. And as a result, we were also introduced to the JCC, which was up north then. Okay, and so that's also where he went for summer camp. What I remembered about Joe is Joe always wanted to share. And Joe was one of the people who was very welcoming to everybody, especially us at the base, always. He would come to different things that we had, and he was always saying, you know, you can go here, you can do this, you can do that. And those were the things that I remembered most about him. He's also one of the people that introduced me to Hillel Academy. All right? And I lived in Clark County, and then I'm going to read. And Clark County, at the time, my son was coming up, and he should have been going into kindergarten, but he could also read, write, and do math, and everything else. And they wanted me to keep him back because Clark County students were not ready. And Joe said, you know, you can put him in Hillel. And that's how he got introduced to Hillel. And everybody thought it was amazing because my son knew all the prayers, and he knew his Hebrew name.
And may I ask, you said it was free, how was it set down?
Let's put it this way. If you see my son, you will see that in his little goatee, he's starting to get gray hair. That's what I'm saying. So it's been a while.
And so, of course, the statement of the Shema is about unity and commitment to unity, and that was one thing, of course, that the Bettmans worked so hard on, that we might all work and live in our own small silos, but really all of Dayton is one, and we are all unified by our Judaism, and that is the statement of the Shema. And so we rise together for that, our prayer, the watchword of our faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai And we are seated. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam libanecha, vidibarta bam, vishivtecha b'beitecha, uvlechtecha b'derech, uvshokbecha uvkumecha, uvshartam lehot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uktavtam Amazuzot beitecha ubisharecha Lemahan tizkaru V'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lihyot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. And Diane?
Well, as Ira told you, we got Joe straight from the audience. And we fell in love with him right away. When he first joined the choir, he would sit near the piano, and we'd come early, and we'd get to talk for a while before people settled down to sing. And he told me the most fascinating stories of Jewish history in Cincinnati and Dayton and even Columbus. He remembered dates and names and places like you wouldn't believe. It was just wonderful. We talked about our businesses. I'm a business owner, and we talked about how hard it is to juggle family and business and be responsible for your business 24 hours a day and still do volunteer things. And you know Joe, he volunteered for everything and gave many years of service to Coventry House, which he was very happy about. He still talked about it all the time. But one of my favorite conversations, we were talking about the pressures of business and family and the hard work and the long hours, and sometimes you have tough clients that you have to be pretty courageous. And he says, "Oh, don't misunderstand. I didn't do this by myself." He said, Elaine was right there with me. He said, "She may look soft and sweet, but she's tough." So here he was, 67 years married, still praising his wife. He was a wonderful man.
Following this section of our service, as we move to our Amidah on Shabbat, we always remember that it's Shabbat with the singing of the Shamru, and we have a very special Shamru this evening.
This Shabbat, we have three solo parts in it. The first solo part is always Spanish. So we will be in our rehearsal on Wednesday. Then we'll do the solos 1 and 2. But on the third verse, when we get there, it'll hit the fire goes to the low and everybody needs to read that verse out of the movie and think about that. Gee, there is voice. How it all comes about in that third verse that we have.
Amru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם.
I'm pitch hitting tonight, but
We are welcoming anyone who's not been a regular member of our choir, there's been a seat for us now, and that's why he's here tonight, and there you go. There's your introduction.
I'm glad to be able to be here tonight because I like to share my moments with Joe as well. The lives of our family and the lives of Joe and the Bettman family intersected in many, many different ways during the course of his and our lives. I remember Joe the pharmacist. When we lived north of town, that was our pharmacy. That was our pharmacist, he and Tim together. And they kept us happy and healthy. Joe the Chazan, Joe the cantor, whose influence on me was pretty substantial. He was a role model for me as I took on the responsibilities cantorially over Temple. And Joe the entertainer. He was very involved in Federation of Jewish Center activities, and there were many times where we did a lot of things together. I remember an original show that we all wrote together and put together, and still remember, although I cannot even remember the title of the name anymore, I think it was They Will Remember Me, a very stirring song about past history of Judaism and bringing on those traditions to our families. It was the song that took the whole show by storm. A beautiful, beautiful song that he sang. Joe the philanthropist, who made sure that the students and the kids in these systems were also going to take on in that shoe. All three of my kids received tzedakah boxes from the Bethans. And I trust and hope that they're using them. Because that was very, very important as well. Joe's influence and the Bettman's influence is very, very strong in our lives, and I'm sure will influence and involve many people to come. Thank you for that.
We rise for the Amidah on page 4 of our prayer book supplements. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur, V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'Neihem, Laman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibur Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah Rab L'Hoshia, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, So make noflim v'rofei koholim, umatir asurim, umakayeh emunataho, lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech meimit u'mechaye, u'matzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lahachayot hakol, baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalalucha selah, baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. And we bless Adonai our God, Abraham's shield, Sarah's helper, the God who gives life to all, and who is the holy God, as we are seated. And Scott, we now hear from you before our prayer for peace. O say shalom.
Joe Bettman was my road dog. The last few years, as we were preparing for high holidays, one of the things that I was asked to do was to make sure that Joe got to our practices. So I had the pleasure of being able to pick him up at Lincoln Park and drive him here, and we'd have our practices, and we'd drive back, and they were great rides. Just he and I sharing ideas about the music that I listened to, or his learning in Cincinnati, and his just his connections down there, his connections here. Even though the drives were very short, they really did mean a lot to me. Joe was very grateful to be able to keep performing with us, especially on Wednesdays. But the pleasure was always mine to drive him.
The prayer for peace, we are told it is never a service unless we pray for peace, and so we continue with O say shalom. May the maker of peace bring peace to all of us. That's shalom Rav. We changed it to O say shalom, and we didn't tell Diane. So Joe would have just somehow merged the two songs together, and we would all be like, what? Yeah, but he would have done it in Yiddish and baffled us all. Oh, say shalom, Hallelujah, say shalom. Just as we pray for peace for the world, we also pray for peace and wholeness, shalom and shalem, fullness and completion for those who are ill, in healing, in need of strength, in need of support, in need of putting together again. The Misha Berach prayer, which is a healing prayer, we offer to all of those in our community who could just use a little bit of extra strength and koach. And so if you have anyone for whom you would like to dedicate this prayer, this is our opportunity to mention their names. Our congregation also remembers Martin Robbins and Madeline Ammons, Benji Klein. We also send healing and strength to the Gurla, Michelson, and Gilbert families. For all of these and for all of those whom we name in our hearts, we continue with the Misha Bera healing prayer on page 5. And we pause for our own private prayers and meditations. So I have files probably almost as old as Joe's career, And I had a story that I always thought would be the perfect Yister story, but it said to me, this is Joe's story. It's an anonymous story, but from a man of his generation who writes, when I was quite young, my father had one of the first telephones in our neighborhood. And I remember the well-polished old case fastened to the wall and the shiny receiver which hung on the side of the box. I was too little to reach the telephone, but used to listen with fascination when my mother used to talk to it. And then I discovered that somewhere inside this wonderful device lived an amazing person. Her name was Information Please, and there was nothing she did not know. Information Please could supply anybody's number and correct time. My first personal experience with this genie in the bottle came one day when my mother was visiting a neighbor. Amusing myself on a tool bench in the basement, I whacked my finger with the hammer. The pain was terrible. There didn't seem any reason for crying because there was no one to give me any sympathy. And so I walked around the house sucking on my throbbing finger, and finally I arrived at the stairway and I saw the telephone. Quickly, I ran for the footstool in the parlor and dragged it to the landing. Climbing up, I unhooked the receiver in the parlor and held it to my ear. Information, please, I said into the mouthpiece just above my head. A click or two, and a small, clear voice spoke into my ear. Information. I hurt my finger! I wailed into the phone. The tears came readily enough now that I had an audience. Isn't your mother home? Came the question. Nobody's home but me, I blubbered. Are you bleeding? The voice asked. No, but I hit my finger with the hammer and it hurts. Can you open your icebox? She asked. And I said I could. Then chip off a little piece of ice and hold it to your finger, said the voice. After that, I called Information Please for everything. I asked her for help with my geography, and she told me where Philadelphia was. She helped me with my math. She told me my pet chipmunk that I had caught in the park just the day before would eat fruit and nuts. Then there was that time that Petey, our pet canary, died. So I called Information Please and told her the sad story. She listened and said the usual grown-up things that people say to soothe a child. But I was unconsoled. I asked her why would it be that birds that sing so beautifully and bring so much joy to the family only end up at the bottom of the cage. And she must have sensed my deep concern, for she said quietly, Paul, always remember that there are other worlds to sing in. Somehow I felt better. Another day I was on the telephone. Information, please. Information, said the now familiar voice. How do you spell fix? I asked. All of this took place in my small town in the Pacific Northwest. When I was 9 years old, we moved across the country to Boston. I missed my friend very much. Information, please, belonged in that old wooden box back at home, and somehow I never thought of trying the tall, new, shiny phone that sat in the table in the hall. As I grew into my teens, the memories of those childhood conversations never really left me. Often in a moment of doubt or perplexity, I would recall the serene sense of security I had then. I appreciated now how patient and understanding and kind she was to have spent her time on a little boy. A few years later, on my way west to college, my plane put down in Seattle. I had about a half an hour between planes. I spent 15 minutes or so on the phone with my sister, who still lived there. Then, without thinking what I was doing, I dialed my hometown operator and said, Information, please. Miraculously, I heard the same small, clear voice I knew so well. Information. I hadn't planned this, but I heard myself asking, could you please tell me how to spell fix? There was a long pause, and then came the soft-spoken answer, I guess your finger must have healed by now. I laughed, so it really is still you, I said. I wonder if you have any idea how much you have meant to me during that time. I wonder, she said, if you knew how much your calls meant to me. I never had any children, and I used to look so forward to your calls. I told her how often I had thought of her over the years, and I asked if I could call her again when I came back to visit my sister. Please do, she said, just ask for Sally. 3 months later, I was back in Seattle. A different voice answered, information. I asked for Sally. Are you a friend? She asked. Yes, a very old friend, I answered. I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, she said. Sally had only been working for us part-time during the last few years because she was sick. She died 5 weeks ago. Before I could hang up, she said, wait a minute. Did you say your name was Paul? Yes. Well, Sally left a message for you. She wrote it down in case you called. Let me find it and read it to you. And she found the paper after a pause, and the note said, tell him I still say there are other worlds to sing in. He'll know what I mean. I thanked her and hung up. I knew what Sally meant. Never underestimate the impression you make on others. Whose life have you touched today? Why not pass this on? I just did. And so it is we know that Joe is singing in other worlds, a person who touched everyone in this room and everyone in this community, who gave so much. His song will never, ever leave us. Every time this choir gathers together to sing, it is in his memory. Every time this family gathers to celebrate all the upcoming simchas, as well as the inevitable losses of time, his voice will be singing with us from the other world. His body may not be here, but his song continues into eternity, and for that we all give great thanks. We turn in our service to the Aleinu prayer on page 6. It's a vision of everything that I think Joe and Elaine worked for and gave to this community. It's a vision that says to us, yeah, we can all sit here and pray and talk about the oneness in the world and healing and all of those great ideas, but really the way to make it happen is to walk out of these doors and just improve someone's life, be kind, tell a story, teach a lesson, and make the world a better place. And that's how we always conclude our services, with this reminder, the Aleinu, and we rise together. Turn now to our Kaddish prayer, remembering not just Joe, but the many people whose lives went before us, who taught us the songs of life, who brought us joy, and who brought us wisdom, who brought us life. On this Shabbat, we mark the anniversary of the passing, the yahrzeit of Stephen Scher, Berta Sherman, Ashlyn Crace Jr., Barbara Jane Freed, Manny Rose, Mimi Wallenstein, Libby Alenko, Dr. Frank Villani, Edith Bookhammer, Erica Garfunkel. We mark as well with sadness the recent passing in this month of Benjamin Michelson, Shirley Gilbert, and Barbara Gurla. We gather them into our prayers and our hearts with our own. And we remember to give thanks for the gift of their life with the Kaddish prayer. On page 7, Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shamei Rabbah v'Alma Divrach Hirutei v'Yamlich Malchutei v'Chayechon u'Vyomechon u'V'Chayei D'Chol Beit Yisrael v'Agala u'Bizman Kariv Imru. Amen. Yehei Shamei Rabbo Mivarach Leolam Ulamei Almaya Yit Barach v'Yishtabach v'Yipoar v'Yitroman v'Yitnaseh v'Yit Hadar v'Yitaleh v'Yitalal Shemei D'Kudeshat B'Richu La'ela Min Kol Birchata v'Shivrata Tushbachata v'Nechemata De'amiran v'Alma v'Imru. Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya v'Chayim Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael v'Imru. Amen. Osei Shalom v'Mramav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael v'Imru. Amen. May the one who causes peace to reign in the high heavens let peace descend upon us, on all of Israel and all the world, as we say, Amen. Please be seated.
And then I'm gonna do, yeah. Yes. Well, we've got, Kiddush and Motzi. Yeah. Yeah. I think that ties in really nice with this.
Got it.
All right. Two longtime members of our choir, Bill and Claudia Freed, are gallivanting across Italy right now, so they could not be here, but they did ask us to share some words. Claudia says, I always remember that Joe had such a kind and gentle heart. After he would sing a solo, he would say how great the TBO choir was and how much fun he had singing with us. We will miss Joe very much. Then Bill added, also because Joe was in the choir with Claudia, fellow groupie Elaine sat with Bill as they sat through many services, and she said, you have a really nice voice, and you know all the prayers, and you know all the words. Bill, you should go join the choir. I couldn't get him to join the choir, but Elaine made him join the choir. That's how we got Bill. Thank you. Now tonight we have a very special presentation. Speaking of Bill, Bill was the primary coordinator, I know Diane helped also with this, for the paver that just arrived in time in honor of Mr. So can I just hand it to him? It's kind of heavy.
Yeah, make Elaine drag it
Elaine
around.
drag it
Or
around.
Todd can come up, and you want to come up and
Would you like
grab
to
it?
grab this? And yes, it will get installed, but I want to see.
Yes, we bought you a rock.
So this will be added to your papers or special papers out here, and it says, Joe Bethel, a real man, your voice is
We will. No, we thought you could carry it around. So for those who don't know, we have an outdoor sanctuary and a beautiful patio area with pavers, and we have engraved one of the major blocks, because of course Joe was a major block in our congregation, and his name will be out there. And so we continue with Kiddush and Hamotzi. I don't know, Todd, if you want to grab some of the individual family members and hold up the cup, we'll lead the song, unless you want to lead the song. Come on, is Leighton still around? He's long gone, huh? Leighton, you want to come up and have some wine?
Yeah.
We like to start them early here. It was always Joe who did Kiddush for us. But I think Leighton gets to drink it, right? Is he driving? Hold it up. So we bless Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratza b'hanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava u'ratzon yinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh b'reishit ki hu yom tefillah lamikra'ei kodesh zeker letziyat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta yatanu kigashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Or hand it off. And wait. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. All right. We want a speech from you, Elaine. Oh, we want that.
I'm going to give her a chance to pull herself together. This was, thanks, Judy. I've never been shy about taking a mic, so Judy knows she can always call on me. How meaningful this has been for Mary to have put this together, for all you guys who participated. My father has been singing in choir since he was 12 years old, a kid in Cincinnati. Music has always been at the center of his life. Judaism has always been at the center of his life. My mother was somewhere on the periphery there, but she was there. The inclusiveness and the warmth and Jay, what's the word? The welcoming that you all gave to him meant the world to him, and he was looking for an outlet for his muse, his singing, and you guys provided that for him. And I think we as a family, I've told the story many times, maybe in my sermon, but that when I was a 13-year-old bar mitzvah, I'm not sure I really appreciated my father's voice as the chazan at Temple Israel, singing at my bar mitzvah when I was trying to impress all the cute 13-year-old girls and my buddies. But I think we've all became accustomed to my father's voice over the years, and that deep, resonant voice, and the lack of shyness about singing at the top of his lungs, and the bim bombs out of place and everything else, and would still sometimes be embarrassing for all of us, but it was fun and something we all remember. And there's a couple of grandsons and granddaughters over here that still do the same thing when they're about. So again, this one's supposed to turn into a long thing, but thank you all for everything you meant to him. And I know so many of you individually, but thank you, and thank you for doing this for our family, for the congregation. It was special. I also just want to say, and then I'm going to turn it over to my mother, who did not speak at the funeral, so start thinking. But it's also really special because due to COVID and other reasons, my brother Mark was not able to be with us at the funeral. My father's sister, Elaine, who really should be up here with us also, was not able to be with us. She decided to go have her own episode in the hospital the same night my father passed. Cheryl, so many of our relatives, you won't see many of us in Temple at all. Judy can attest. You won't see too many of us in Temple at all on a regular basis. For some of us, this might be our first time in Temple ever. How special to be able to celebrate my father now 5 months after his passing with a celebration of, and in the place that he loved, and with the songs that he loved and with the people that he loved doing them with. So thank you on behalf of our family for doing this for us. And Mom, you have something? This is my shy retiring mother.
I've been in this temple for several years and sat in the audience and looked at my rabbi with great admiration. And all of a sudden, it came to me several weeks ago that we have something in common. Not that we wanted to plan it, but that we have something in common, and the two of us have endured the sadness, but the strength of the congregation and our families have kept us going, and I think that's what it's all about. It's family, congregation, and for Joe also, because I can't say what he felt about the choir and his, I was going to say mistress, that doesn't sound good. He didn't love Mary as much as he loved me, but he sure loved her. So I on behalf of my family, our family, thank you for welcoming us into this congregation and supporting us through the good times and the bad times. Thank you.
In case she misses it, we've got cookies and stuff in the other rooms. We'll have a light oneg for you guys. Don't run away because we got lots of cookies. Jay already laid them out. They're beautiful, I'm sure. Right?
They're already laid out.
They're laid out. So if
That's
you
why
want
I
to leave
ran
now
them last
before the end of the
minute
service,
to
that's
get
fine.
Not done yet.
Yes, throw the bread. Throw the bread burn.
We now continue with the closing song, which of course,
Has a story.
this indeed has a story for our congregation.
First of all, Elaine was always calling me Joe's girlfriend, but I continued to tell her I didn't know either of my grandfathers. So I really did. First of all, my first Yiddish grandfather is that guy right there, Mr. Iris Zagalowitz, who introduced me to Joe Bettman. So I had two Yiddish grandfathers. Here you go.
Fathers.
And what's that?
They're young.
I know,
Fathers.
yeah. So anyways, I call them my Yiddish grandfathers. Maybe not you because you're too young, but Joe. Yeah, okay. So anyways, Joe was always commenting on how busy I was. He was concerned I had too many irons in the fire and too many projects going on. And one day at the end of a choir rehearsal, he turns to me and he says, "Men kann nicht tanzen, oisve hanstenes, mit ein Tuches." We all know Tuches, right?
We all know
So
that.
I said, please interpret. He said, you can't dance at two weddings with one rear end. And pointed his wise finger at me with a smile. Now, when Joe and I would get together to work on our new Yiddish songs, some were on Zoom. We didn't stop our Yiddish studies during all the pandemic. We continued on Zoom. We did some in person.
It seemed that the song lyrics and melodies would always inspire a story, as you know. Your father loved to tell stories. It's a continued blessing that I have many of these recordings on those little voice memos on my telephone. And there was a moment in October that I was listening back to that I want to share. So we were working on this next song, and I asked him, when did he start picking up on the Yiddish language? He said it was spoken at home at least up until his grandmother had passed away, since Yiddish was the only language that she knew. He remembered that she would send letters and she wrote them in Yiddish, and that was the language. So as he began to share his next story, Elaine giggles and says, "Share the story about your mother and the kosher chicken." So with a smile and a little twinkle in his eye, here are the words. I just kind of typed it as he said it on the recording. "Well, we kept kosher in the house. My dad never made a big income. He was a paper hanger, and he did what he had to do. When Grandma passed, my mother said, 'We don't have to keep kosher anymore. I'm going to Kroger's. I'm going to buy a chicken there because it's less expensive.' The story goes that she walked up and down in front of the store several times before she finally got the nerve to go into the Kroger's to buy that non-kosher chicken." Joe continues, "All day Thursday, the women of the household were busy in the kitchen preparing all the food for the Shabbat meal, and at that moment, Elaine whispers, 'Not at my house. We had ham and bacon.'" Joe continues, "Now, my mother cooks this grocery store bought chicken, and you know what? It really wasn't as good as the kosher chicken." There's a lesson. Then he adds a joke to the story that he said he borrowed from a friend at the Jewish Federation a long time ago. Many of you probably heard this, but imagine Joe telling it. "A woman comes into the kosher chicken store. She picks up the chicken, she holds it and she smells under the wing. She smells again, and she turns to the owner and she says, 'This chicken doesn't pass my test.' To which the store owner says, 'Lady, you couldn't pass that test.'" When his mom came to town, he said that it was very special. All the sisters and relatives would come to visit, and he could still picture her sitting on the floor, surrounded by all the children and all the family, singing many songs, but especially this song. And we'll invite you, if you recognize the chorus, to sing along on the chorus. "I remember when I was a child, my mother used to sing to me, 'You're an angel beautiful as all the worlds. I will bring a little star to thee.' And it still sounds in my ears, that beautiful melody. My youth is lost till I sing to myself, sing, little bird, sing." And the chorus, "Sing, Fegelet, sing, magst mein Gemüt grün, du frisch mein Zuckerren von die Kinderjahren. Sing, Fegelet, sing." Now the Yiddish. "Ich gedenk, wenn ich bin noch a Kind gewesen, pflegt mein Mama nu singen zu mir. Bist du Malach, bist wie alle Welten schön. Ich will Stern du bringen zu dir. Es klingt mir noch just in dir Ohren, die schöne Melodie. Hab schon mein Jugend verloren, noch sing ich dir Lieder, let me see. Try it. Sing, Fegelet, sing. Magst mein Gemüt grün, du frisch mein Zuckerren von die Kinderjahren. Sing, Fegelet, sing. I want one more. Sing, Fegelet, sing. You can ooh here. magst mein Ermitring, du frisch mein Sekoren, von die Kinder Joren, sing, begelet sing.
And we wish each other Shabbat Shalom.
I know you were listening. You caught a couple there, but we won't tell, right? Thank you. I'm like, don't ruin that beautiful song for me. She's so ornery. She's.
I was like, oh my God, that ties into my sermon. Oh my God, how do I tie these two together?
It was beautiful.